Welcome to the Virtual Power Teams podcast. And today, again, we have an exciting guest, Krysitan Tursky. He's quite a kind of Renaissance type, multi-talented, but in the recent year, he was learning and development manager, particularly in the digital learning. And right now, he is leveraging analytics to manage the war for talent, to leverage analytics in order to win the war for talent. So before any further ado, Krysitan, welcome to the podcast, and please tell us who you are and what you do.
Peter, thanks so much for having me and inviting me. And I love the introduction of I know it's tricky with me. I don't have a clear linear career path, but I think you put it so well. I think these days I'm blending both worlds of, still my talent management and L&D expertise right now with analytics. So who am I, right? I'm dialing in from Warsaw, Poland today. This is where I live with my family. I have my lovely wife, Anya, and also I'm a proud father of almost 1 year old. So my daughter actually, she came to this world around on January 1st. This year, so still, very, very fresh in this parental journey, enjoying it a lot. Through the topic of your podcast, of virtual teams, I'm really appreciative of my job. I almost work full-time remotely by now, so I can't say how thankful I am to have, a chance right now to be pretty close to, to my family, to daughter in those early days of her life. So means a lot. In terms of my current role, so I currently work as a Senior Director, HR Analytics and Innovation Partner at JLL. So for those of you dialing in who don't know JLL, it's mostly B2B business. So for those of you not in real estate, you may not know fully. So JLL, it's Fortune 200 company. Core expertise is in all aspects of real estate, with a mission to shape this real estate for a better world. Now big focus currently on ESG and tech. So that's JLL. In terms of my career, I think Peter, we will dial up as much as you'd like to. But to your point, as much as I currently work in the analytics and innovation landscape, so trying to solve problems for our business through the lens of people analytics. Predominantly I've been working in L&D and talent space. Big passion for digital learning, not so much as like instructional design, creating e-learning for a given project. I've done that too, but more about like creating a learning ecosystem for employees to thrive and to follow the lifelong learning journey. So that's always been my passion, mission. And I still bring some of that to the analytics world, especially in my partner role with the business. I actually find it blends very, very nice, although it is not intuitive at the first place. You may think L&D analytics pretty distant, but you really need the storytelling pieces and this L&D soft kind of skill nature to really tell your story of the data insights. So I find that blend pretty useful.
Excellent. Fantastic. So let's deep dive a little bit. First of all, congratulations for the newborn. I didn't know. And I'm so glad that now the hybrid working, remote work, it helps you to spend more time.
Big time.
Yes. So tell us a bit about the war for talent, being on the HR side, on the learning and development, and now on the analytics, how serious it is. Maybe give us some dimensions in terms of attrition, retention numbers. And then we will go into it. How can you, it through analytics, through your...
Yeah, very happy to. I think, talking about this topic today, I don't think we can start without just acknowledging where we are economic cycle-wise, I think. And the reason I think it's worth bringing it, because I think for a lot of companies, it's time right now going to be for employees to say, I check on your promises towards us. And what I mean by that is obviously through the times, and I think we've been on a pretty successful journey. Disregarding the COVID disruption, which was a classic, I think, V-shape bounce back, which, you know, I don't, if you're not an active investor in some particular spaces, you wouldn't even notice, right? On the timeline, if you really think about it, like it was pretty quick in terms of the bounce back. Obviously, you know, government full support to, you know, making things going. So honestly, since like 07, 08 crisis, the financial one, I think we've been on a pretty nice streak and journey of years going up. And for these days, obviously companies, a lot of them created narrative, and some, I think, backed up this narrative for, you know, making sure that people are the core asset of what we do. And, you know, and that's been great and fantastic. I think we've been experiencing for a good few years employee-led, I would say, hiring market. So that I think employers, to your point, it was at the point where they really needed to step up to attract the best people, and employees, they had choice as they never had. And pandemic shed even the light on some aspects like work-life balance. Okay, we discussed that pre-pandemic, but now it became like almost a must, right? Everyone wants to flex. It's in some ways, right? I think it's always going to be personal of like, what are your flex preferences? And it became a must these days. So that's, I would say, one of the biggest advantages of the pandemic. It brought some of these considerations for employees thinking about their careers. But the reason I'm still bringing economic pieces right now is we may be at a little bit of a turning point in terms of economic cycles. I think depending on who you talk to, you know, what newspapers or articles you read, I still wouldn't call it like a full-blown crisis, probably because I know we still haven't got like, you know, Lehman Brothers bankruptcy. Like it was like this one point that you can say, okay, crisis, right? So now you just see those things, right? Inflation pressures, obviously war in Ukraine, semiconductor war, you know, China, US, Taiwan pressures, global chain disruptions. I would say you look at 2023, I think most of the business wouldn't look at this year particularly optimistic for that perspective. So I think this also can bring some reflection on this war of talent, that the balance might be a little bit shifting. You know, you start to see more headlines of, I think Twitter right now is so much trending, like, oh my God, right? I haven't spent a single day reading through my usual, you know, feed without looking at Twitter this and Twitter that, and usually not the best, you know, quotations for sure, since Elon's took over. But it also gives you then the overall outlook on, you know, how this powers, I would say, and dynamics might be shifting towards more employers starting to put a little maybe different demands towards their employees than just few months back. But with all that said, I still think that what we've learned in the past years and what we've cherished when we're on the up, that still should very much carry even in the in the slowdown. So what I mean by that, flexibility, we know this really came top of mind, and I think if we start to back up on it and trying to reverse it,
yes,
employees, that's one of the easiest way, I think, to still lose employees. Obviously, you know, comp and ben, I've just recently picked up on the LinkedIn's Learning Global Talent Trend report, and in the earlier this year, the top one was actually the flexibility in terms of like what employees are looking for.
Let me just, because maybe the audience is not so much HR savvy. You mentioned comp and bens, compensation benefits. Let's articulate the top three fronts where this war for talent is currently led. You mentioned flexibility, compensation, but if you could prioritize and give a little bit of what is actually happening there.
Well, you see, this is giving a simple answer to a complex program is always tricky. If I was to say three things, right, I would say flexibility still. I would say yes, compensations and benefits in a matter of, employees right now with inflation's going up,
Mhm.
it will become more important in their decision about any future job. And actually, as I've read in the report, it just made the top of the requirements right now, overpassing flexibility, which was currently trending. And if I was to call the third one, it's still about companies' purpose and value, making sure that you really have that purpose well defined, and you're bringing employees on the journey, especially top talent, right? They want to do meaningful job. They want to be challenged on the job. And if they have good comp and band and good flexibility, you need to challenge them, right? To have to do some to have feeling that they do something meaningful within their careers, right? That they're solving some big problems that impact the society in a good way. And for some businesses, it will be easier because of what they do. And for some, I think they will need to reinvent themselves. But these to me are the three aspects. Now, if you ask me, and I think you did, around what is the proportion of it, right? Like, what is the balance? This is, I think, when analytics can really kick in. And I don't think there is one answer for every company, right? I think you really need to dig and start to listen to your employees, and they will tell you what's most important for them. And even if you have business like ours, and it's like 100,000 employees worldwide, you definitely will have some sort of like top level trending and themes coming up. But then if you're trying to solve for those problems just at the global level, you're going to miss a lot of interesting nuances and pieces, for a geographical perspective, or sometimes for a business line perspective, because reality is people in the company, they belong to different teams, they do different things on their daily, and they work from different locations. So you really need to go levels down with your analysis and look for those patterns deeper. And then your equation of this flexibility, comp and band, and purpose, you need to kind of mix up the balance depending on, in those smaller pockets, what does people tell you, and dial up on what's important for them. So as much as you can, honestly, personalize it for people, personalize the experience for them, and analytics can help a lot.
Yes, we'll deep dive in analytics, and I'm a mathematician. I have aspiration for numbers and analysis. Maybe not all the audience is as, savvy and as hungry for analytics, but can you give me a bit of examples? The delight is in the detail. The devil is in the detail, but also the delight. If we take flexibility as a top one in the wars for talent, what are the most exotic, exciting examples that company do right now in order to be super flexible, in order to win on this front?
Well, I think I'm not sure if it's about exciting. I think what the best companies do, in my view, in flexibility, is actually pretty simple. It's about really giving people choice, because I think that's at the end what it's about, right? If you come with any framework that is in some form restricted, or is your just C-suite idea about, hey, employees, 3 days out of office, 2 days flex, and go ahead and pick those days that you like, etc. That's already not full flexibility. And let's be realistic. I think each company needs to evaluate, obviously, what they do and where they can offer what. But you'll have companies. Ours is a good example. We probably can't allow all of our 100,000 employees to work fully remotely if they wanted to, because it's just because of the type of the work they do. But you have two choices, right? Either you can dictate a policy that would be a bit more strict and top bottom driven, or you start with the acknowledgement that, hey, employees, we give you the leading piece of this conversation of like, go and decide what's important for you, talk to your manager, figure out what's feasible because of the job you do, and follow that pattern, right? So I think it's about empowering employees. So if the companies empower employees to make those decisions around flexibility, that's, I think, the best they can do, right? If we start to see those policies and we see those headlines, right? I'm pretty sure, Peter, you've seen of like C-suite is bringing people back, right? Forcing people back. We want you back in the office 5 days a week. Obviously, the Twitter example, hardcore, right? Like we want you minimum 30 hours right now in the offices to do the hardcore job, right? Yes. Is that something that people are looking for in general? I would doubt, right? So that's your extreme. On the other side, I think the to look good in this is, you know, give employees the power to do, and then go from there.
Yes, thank you. I in one of my other podcasts, we reviewed the extreme of allowing people to work wherever they want. So no office at all. We were talking about the where, flexibility, and then whenever they like. Some companies go for fully asynchronous or just 10% synchronous time, the rest asynchronous. So they allow both dimension where and when to be flexible. And there is also some best practices emerging, some companies that do it for 2-3 years, and our listeners had that. Let's now deep dive a little bit in the analytics, and maybe more specifically, one of the ways to win the war for talent is to retain your top talent, you know, the people that already work, the key essential people, not to lose them to the competition and so on. So can you give us specific examples, and bear in mind that the audience may not be so, you know, analytically savvy and HR savvy, how, with the help of analytics, we could retain our top talent?
I think, yeah, this is, I think, the when it gets pretty sweet, right? Because I think in terms of the big trending that impact employee satisfaction and engagement, we discussed that. I'm pretty sure part of the other podcast conversations, things like, you know, flexibility, pay, on a high level, we know what those are. But as said, devil lies in details, and it's about how you take actions based on that, right? And I think that, first of all, you still should analyze at the global level, and that's what we do. So throughout the employee life cycle, right, I would say you usually would have moments that matter for employees. So how they're onboarded, right? And onboarding can be the key and a good predictor of how long employee will actually stay. Then you obviously offer them opportunities to learn and grow as they progress their career. You promote them, right? You give them better pay, etc. And obviously, you are there with them in the important moments. So let's say becoming a part in this one, right? What does the company do to make it easy for you throughout that moment? So it's not only about those work-related moments; it's about the personal moments. And then also when you do the exit eventually, because let's face it, most of us at some point say goodbye to our employee. How to make it still meaningful and positive to keep potential for returning. So from talent management, you have this cycle, right? And then what analytics does is we look at each of those pieces to really trying to measure and understand what are employees saying for each of this. And then we can, by analyzing and looking at, you know, how are we doing with onboarding, we can give valuable insights back to the business of like, hey, this is what your employees say, that's what they value, so let's keep doing this and this and that. But this and this seems to be an opportunity area because, you know, so for instance, with the hybrid model, right?
Yes,
let's say people are saying, yes, we appreciate the flexibility, we love that. On the opportunity, we're missing some of the connections, or it is getting harder to build a good network, right? Say within the company, because it's all so remote. So then if we bring those insights back to the business, we can then say, hey, let's try to think about how to prioritize some of this, you know, networking and making connection exercises into the flow of work so that it becomes easier for those people to onboard. So that's, I know I got pretty tactical in the sense of a given onboarding exercise, but I think you kind of have the umbrella of understanding your global trends, but then you start to really dig into those individual moments that define whether employees are engaged, whether they're happy, and whether they want to stay. And as much as I have the onboarding exercise, we're going like this at different angles. I think the best
Let me.
feed.
Mhm. No, I just, because I love your insights, and I just wanted to kind of give you another question and idea. In our preliminary discussion, you mentioned that you measure, as you said now, the indicators, but you measure some KPIs, and I'll be interested, and I guess the audience as well, to hear what do you exactly measure. And you mentioned that you could forecast if some people are about to leave. You could warn the future. So in this predictive a little bit area, what do you measure?
Yeah.
What is the link? I think that will be exciting for them to know.
I think that definitely may be interesting because, a lot of times I think people analytics is about this descriptive analytics. So kind of looking back at the past and just kind of showcasing, okay, this is the current state, or this is what happened. But obviously the exciting piece is if we can predict a little bit in terms of like what the future holds. And I think, yes, currently we do work on some of the projects that go on this journey. I think a good example is around employee attrition. So for those of you, so attrition is basically the levels of quitting, right? The company usually measured as a kind of 12-month rolling metric. As always, I think every company especially of the bigger size will measure their attrition levels, and they will try to benchmark against externally, right? Usually against their sector. So if you have an attrition level 12-month of 20%, I think you can have an idea whether it's good or bad, but until you actually try to benchmark and verify with market, you wouldn't 100% know, right? Because you may just be in the period where globally, let's say, there is this war for talent, great resignation, levels go up, so you still need to benchmark. So again, if we know we have attrition levels, and let's say we monitor that and we start to see a problem there, right? And we are also able to define our top talent population, and we see they're living at the higher rates. Then you start to ask questions, why is that, right?
Yes.
So again, you may have some general assumptions and that they should be somewhat true, but you want some more details. So I think with analytics, what we have, and again, this is all appreciating employees, confidentiality of data, etc. So we can only, as people analytics team, use the data in a way that it's transparent and available to. But even with that, I think we're capable to predict with some pretty solid measures. Probability of some of the employees exiting. This will obviously be built around some demographics data. So we, for instance, notice that, let's say, our younger talent is leaving at the higher rate than the older. So you can kind of test some of these, variables and see how much they can explain an attrition, an attrition model. So you obviously type of engagement surveys where people share how they feel. Do they see themselves stay within the next 1 year or two? That tells you a lot. Usually, if people will tell you in any engagement survey, I'm going to leave, then usually that's what they do, right? But it's not to say, though, if there's oftentimes examples where people will share, I'm engaged, I love it here. They can still leave, right? So you can't just base your full model on the fact that employees will tell you, oh, I'm going to stay 2 years here, right? Things may happen. So there are other flags. So a good model, what I want to say is with our people analytics team, which is brilliant, right? When we sit down, we will test a ton of variables from like an engagement perspective, from demographics perspective, from component band perspective, and figure out a model that can give you then at the end the result. What employees are at the high risk of leaving eventually, right? And what are some of the flags that tell you so? And that gives your people partners and your managers then a clear insight into, hey, if we consider these folks to be a top talent and we want to build future of the company around them, this is what we think, that they may be at the risk of leaving. What do we want to do right now? And here are some of the even recommendations of what can be those personalized incentives to keep them with us, right?
Yes, excellent, excellent. Now we've touched upon this, but maybe now more focused. How the hybrid working actually is impacting the motivation of the workforce? You mentioned it's like a good news, but what actually happens?
Well, forces, I think on this one go into few directions. I think what is hitting in terms of like the external research and trends, I think Peter, you definitely seen the quiet quitting phrase. So quiet quitting, the idea here is that the folks actually don't quit as of like leaving the employer going for their next opportunity, but the idea is that their engagement drops, and as such they're just giving a minimal effort to continue within the current job, but not giving their discretionary effort, which I think a lot of companies is definitely their growth and their success is often based out of that extra additional effort when it's going beyond your job description, but towards more of like, how can we create this extra value, or let's discuss this additional idea, people getting excited. So this is a very dangerous phenomenon. And I think, to your point, partially in terms of guilt, people are pointing towards, oh, that probably can be because we are a bit more disconnected in this hybrid environment. We went full hybrid in many ways, and we are right now going to be less engaged because we don't see each other that much, etc., etc. But that's an easy way out, right? To say just that. Again, here your analytics come, and you should really ask your people, what do they say? And then you start to break it down and see the real issues. And for each company, it will be different, right? And I can tell you from our kind of internal view, we haven't seen much movement on the engagement levels of our employees throughout the cycle. We probably even encountered a spike early in the pandemic days, and that usually the thought there was, because it was a big of a shock and a change, people were like, okay, let's stick by what we know at least, job-wise. But then throughout, when there was labels around great resignation, people shifting jobs, we're closely monitoring, attrition levels, engagement levels. Pretty fortunate to say we haven't got major spikes. So I think we were pretty robust to really answer some of those things that employees were asking for, like more flexibility, but in a good way, but also how to enable those meaningful connections to stay. And I think this is what I would point out. It's easy to say, oh, we're less connected, but what as employees, as people partners, as HR, as managers, what do you do to keep your employees engaged, right? And if you just allow them full flexibility, but you miss the point of like giving them a strategy, priorities, and goals, that's an easy way to get disconnected, right? Well, they're going to be flexing, but not doing the job, right? Because they have nothing meaningful to do. So
it looks like this triangle that you defined, flexibility, compensation, benefits, and purpose, like many models where you have a triangle, you have to balance them all and monitor each of them carefully in order to.
Precisely. But what I've seen, I think this is, if I was to, from what I see, reading the reports, looking at some of the data, obviously in the analytical function, I think that would be probably it in the most cases. I think might be one to watch to try to address quiet quitting is that, are your teams well connected, right? So they appreciate flexibility, we know that, but are they think they're well connected? Are they think, do they resonate to the purpose of the company? Do they have challenging and stretching goals that get them excited about maybe not going physically to work if they work remotely, but to just turning off the laptop and start the day, right? If you're missing that piece, that's going to be your disengagement flag, and you need to address that in the first place.
Fantastic. Let's look now. You're part of a global company and you have rich experience. You've mentioned L&D, but before that, sales and so on. What was your most exciting experience with remote team, virtual team that you worked with?
Oh, there's been a few, but I'm gonna point out, we're doing podcasts today, so I'm gonna, I think, refer that to. So, and it actually, I was still in the L&D role, so I was still doing a very big focus on activating digital L&D at my company, and pandemic hit, and we've seen that, and even when I was in L&D role, you see, I was very interested in what like the trends internally are saying. So I was working closely with analytics, and I was analyzing some of this engagement data on a high level. And what I've noticed that the people at the company, they were feeling pretty engaged in terms of their direct team and direct manager, very good connection, very strong connection. But they started to drift a little bit in terms of like bigger vision, bigger mission of the company. Like I clearly see that shift of like people focusing more on like their immediate teams, but feeling a bit distant from the bigger picture of strategy, vision, mission. And I thought, myself as an L&D professional, how can I address that? Is there anything I can do?
Yes.
And it was actually with my manager at that time, brilliant, Rachel Down, leading L&D for the region at that time, when I think we figured out, how about we do some podcasts? So the podcast was the idea. We've done a lot of webinars. We need to shift from classroom to webinars, but we thought like, okay, people like podcasts, but they hear to them externally. But do we have anything internally available for a good tune in? Not much, right? We were more doing externally with the clients, which drives great value, but nothing internally for employees. So the long story short is, I took that idea. I was able to scale it up to a global podcast across all JLL with my colleague from actually Dubai, Tisha Maniram. So we were co-hosting. So you see, myself plays out of Warsaw, she plays out of Dubai, and then folks we interviewed: managing director of Romanian office, chief legal officer for the global JLL operating out of Chicago, future of work directors out of the Singapore office. So we really reached this global mass. And the problem we're aiming to solve is like, let's connect those leaders and their thoughts to the people, because realistically, Peter, if you are joining a company, even before pandemic, in your office or in remote, how many leaders of a global organization you're interacting with on a daily? It can be zero, right? Or it can be one if it's located in your office, maybe 2 or 3. Yes. But the idea is very limited number, right? But they're great people and they have great inspiring ideas, and they're at the end coming up with the strategy of our company. So how do we connect them to everyone? And you know what I was excited about is that this was, fully remote project. We did it using just simple tools, available out of the, Microsoft suite, a little bit of a instructional design tool. So that came handy, my experience from like instructional design days. Long story short, it is, in thousands of listens by now. And what I'm predominantly excited about is that we not only anchor it about business, but also about personal connection. So we're really talking to people about, who they are on a personal level, what are their hobbies, childhood nicknames, things like that. So really showing the people face of those leaders. So great connection. And from an analytical standpoint, the final point I want to make on this is, I was super excited to see that the biggest number of listeners comes from the new joiners of the company, because they come and it was kind of, as a featured content on our learning platform, and they say, okay, let me check. And then they were commenting like, that, oh, this is great. We have fantastic leaders, etc. Oh, what a great thoughts shared. But then I thought to myself, how nice of an experience that is for you to come to the business. Let's say in your hybrid remote environment, let it be, you don't even have an office in some locations where people work. And then being able to start by being exposed to some of this leadership thoughts. So part of our culture of JLL, I thought that's pretty powerful, and folks thought that too in the comments. So I enjoyed that.
Absolutely. Amazing example. I'm tempted to comment because exploring, researching companies that do fully remote work and also fully asynchronous work, there are three things they do, and you've touched upon two of them. One is full transparency, and I will not deep dive, but it means every employee has the information of the CEO, including P&L, including if you have to make tough decisions, what's the rationale. Second, that you kind of deep dive, they master video. Now, you did it in a podcast format with interviews, and it's very popular. I know other clients. Others, the senior leaders of this organization, just address everyone. So by video, no longer 10 minutes. People have no patience for more than 10 minutes. And they have great analytics. If people watch it, if how much they watch it, if they come back. And it's not to go to them and say, now you didn't watch it, you have to watch it by tomorrow. It's not feedback. Maybe my topic was not relevant enough. Maybe my engaging style was not engaging enough. So they really master video. And the more flexibility you allow, the more you need to provide the opportunity for people to connect with the senior leaders, understand from the horse's mouth why we do what we do, what are our targets and for the next period and so on. So mastering this video is a great example. It comes across. And the third one is they do retreats. If they do fully remote, they don't have an office. They meet twice a year, once the whole company and then once per department, to enable this connection, because people need connections. What you say, naturally they aggregate to their leader and forget about the rest. They need physical connection, even once or twice a year, to be able to restart, re-energize, and so on. So a bit of a long comment, but tell us, what do you read right now and what do you listen to?
Very good question. So in terms of the reading, now being a parent, one of the things I struggled with, especially early days, was to find time for some, good reading, etc. But I'm happy to say that I've in the past, 2-3 months, I started to unlock a bit more time. So I think I read already 2-3 books, which I feel like, okay, I'm getting to a good rhythm back. So currently, nothing I think that would be super exciting for the audience, because it's nothing new. It's a guide to 21 trends for the 21st century. Have you read that? It's one of the. You
mentioned one or two trends, just top of your mind.
Which again, I'm not at the beginning of it, but the big pieces mentioned there is about the advances in AI and biotechnology, and what kind of opportunities, but also more like challenges it faces. And also, I think in the big time, it debates that as much as we in the world engage into a journey of like liberal thought and it being the dominant force for the world, we're seeing some cracks. Again, this book was original, the first issue around 2014, but I think I have the edited editions. So it was about when Donald Trump became a president, we had Brexit idea. So there was this idea of, eroding of liberal thought and some sort of that people are being not happy fully with it. And where does it place us for this century? What are the alternatives to the liberal thought? Because, we fought back the communism, all the forms of, Nazism, etc. What is the alternative toward the liberal thought? Is there one? And if not, should we be worried, and how can we take proactive action? So that's just the setup, I think, from the book. I still have majority ahead to analyze, but I think a really good read to try to put your head into a bigger picture of what's happening.
We'll share the link with the audience in the notes. And now the last question, which is a standard question for this podcast. Now get your crystal ball out and tell us, what do you see? What is the future of virtual teams, of virtual working?
To me, the future is bright, I should say. I honestly try to think that I do hope that we don't go back to the old ways of working. I hope that most of the companies will not make this mistake of forcing something back to people. I do hope that I think there's challenges ahead to make this work 100%. There was initial super optimism for those, especially, again, I was doing a lot of remote work before the pandemic. So to me, it wasn't like I'm experiencing something super new. For a lot of people, it was just, first time, a lot of different emotions, super excited, super low and frustrated for not being able to see colleagues, different emotions. Now I think we went through this, I would say, first big wave. Now it's about stability. So the future for me is right now to be proactive in shaping it, because we right now in the next year, especially when the crisis will eventually come, is how do we make sure we really don't go back to the old ways, but we try to make the new ways working for the best. So and I hope that we all play parts. So obviously, Peter, with your mission and your great work you do to ensure virtual teams get maximum out of what they do, this is important. Let's continue that, and hopefully it's just bright.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us a number as an analytics person? How many of the teams will be virtual according to your judgment? Will there be any teams left that will have to be in one room, in one office?
Oh, wow. This is getting to really kind of predictive and not like futuristic mode, to be honest. So definitely not looking to quote, I would say from analytical perspective. Depends on what kind of horizon do we speak. 2030, still there's going to be, I think, a lot of the face-to-face things. 2050, getting lesser for sure. I think it's still big thing is around the automating of the services, right? As much as we can do already a lot in terms of production, we've made some great progress in like doctors and you know what I mean. I'm missing the word, but like being able to get all your doctor advice virtually. So it's getting there, but on some pieces it will just take longer. But I think the percentage will go up. Will it go to the 100% by any year? Probably not. I would say there's probably still going to be, and to your point, people will be carving out for those interactions. So as much as virtual can be their main to go, they'll be coming together to just still enjoy the human nature.
Absolutely. So virtual is, as you say, for the flexibility, for the freedom, for the quality of life, but it's not to replace the face-to-face. There will be interaction. There will be exciting moments together.
Peter, my take on the whole kind of metaverse discussion is like, yes, we need to optimize the virtual world. We need to make it better for so many reasons and make interactions that are meaningful and less stressful. But to me, the vision of us wanting to spend more or leave more emotions or spend more lives within the virtual setup than the actual life setup, that isn't the vision I'm signing up for, to be honest. That's my take on it.
Absolutely. That's not the vision of virtual power team. That means only VR and Google's.
Yeah.
It's still human heart-to-heart connection.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Christian. Great insights. Finally, we had a bit more analytical, a bit more numbers person on the podcast. Thank you for all your insights.
No worries, Peter. I really appreciate the discussion. Again, keep the good job going with making virtual teams working, and hopefully we connect soon. And thanks to all the listeners also, and wish you a great rest of the day.
Yes. Okay, that was it all, folks.